Hello and welcome to the 24th Constellation. I was just at a WP writing conference presenting about starting a reading series, and one of the things that was like one of the takeaways was you have to let the audience know how to respond. But you all don't need to be told. You know what to do.
What does that mean? Like applause here? Like,
yeah, well, like it's okay to be warm, and it's okay to
laugh.
It's okay to laugh.
Oh.
It's okay to be excited about literature and to be here supporting each other, right? Yes. I'm Jessica. This is Junae, and there is Armin. And I see so many familiar faces in the room tonight, loved faces, and a lot of new ones too. For whom is this your first time at Constellation? We are so happy you're here, and we hope that you come back. We are happy to bring together these readers, Charlie J. Stevens, Carolyn Supinka, and Stephanie Victoire, in a special collaboration tonight with Buckman Journal. And we're happy to bring together all of you, this audience in this room, and those who are joining us via the live stream. As we gather in this space, it's important to acknowledge that we are gathering during a time of struggle and violence against many peoples. The Palestinian people continue to be brutalized by the decades-long American-funded genocide and colonial violence of Israeli apartheid. We also stand in solidarity with victims of genocide in Sudan and Congo, and with the indigenous peoples, the Multnomah, Clackamas, Tumwater, and Watwalla Cascade bands of the Chinook, as well as the Tualet and Kalapuya, and many other recognized and unrecognized indigenous nations of the Columbia River, on whose traditional unceded homelands we are currently gathered. This is a place in which many promises have not been kept, and we acknowledge our responsibility to work in material ways toward land back. We stand firmly against anti-Blackness and recognize that police violence and all white supremacist violence must be named and opposed. We stand with immigrants, against whom the current federal administration is carrying out horrifying acts of violence, imprisonment, and erasure. These forms of violence, along with transphobic violence being legislated across the United States, endanger the lives of trans, queer, gender nonconforming, and non-binary people. Therefore, as we begin our event, we wish to underscore that none of us are free until all of us are free.
That's right.
And that all anti-racist, liberationist, and decolonial struggles are intertwined. This statement is adapted by one created by Rawi, the Radius of Arab American Writers, and we thank them for their ongoing organizing. And we say all of this also with the intention to make good use of this time that we have together. We want to thank Lance Cleland of Tin House and Melissa Amstutz of Bishop and Wild for opening the space to us. And we thank each of you for your consideration in honoring our COVID policy, which is masks down here in the reading space, bookstore space, and masks optional upstairs in the food and drinking space. You may be here because you know one of the readers or one of us, which is a really good reason, but we really hope that you come back. We get here together on the second Thursday of the month, usually, and we take a break in July and December. So tonight is a special collaboration with Buckman Journal. Yeah. I remember when I first saw Buckman Journal many years ago, I was like, ooh, what is this beautiful print publication? But I did not suspect that it would be around for so long, because it's hard to make a print publication. Like, it is a ton of labor and a real effort of love to do this kind of work. So we are really happy that Buckman is sustaining and thriving here with us. So, named after the nefarious inner southeast neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, Buckman Publishing makes a twice-a-year anthology alongside books of all genres. Sending scouts deep into the local literature and art scene, Buckman finds the best to present. Delivered with grit and cunning design, the printed medium is very rich and alive in Buckman.
Woo!
So we are going to welcome Emmy to introduce tonight's readers.
Thank you so much. It's really exciting to be here. I have been here since Constellation #1, which must have been January 2023, and it was popping from day one.
Yes,
so I've gone home many a Thursday night just buzzing and inspired and ready to write. So I hope that can happen for some of us tonight. Thank you for having us, and thank you for filling the room so beautifully. Y'all are looking good. We have 3 readers tonight. We'll hear from a couple genres, but we're going to just go alphabetical. So we'll start out with Charlie J. Stevens, who's a non-binary trans writer from the Pacific Northwest. Born and raised in Salem, Oregon, Charlie is the owner of Sea Wolf Books and Community Writing Center on the southern Oregon coast. Charlie's short fiction has appeared in Electric Literature, Best Small Fictions Anthology, New World Writing, and elsewhere. Their debut novel, right over there, A Wounded Deer Leaps Highest, Emily Dickinson reference, was long-listed for the Center for Fiction's 2024 First Novel Prize and is a finalist for the Oregon Book Award. And I'm very happy to announce that their new collection of short stories will be published by Buckman in March 2026. Welcome, Charlie.
I just took a secret picture of y'all to send to my friends in Port Orford, which I'm sure none of you have ever heard of. 100%. Well, great. I was just like, there's so many people and they're wearing masks, and they're like, what? That never happens. Okay. So I'm going to read a couple short pieces that'll be coming out in the Buckman collection next year.
Will you move the microphone?
Oh, yes.
It's a kind of flexy.
Yeah. Okay. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay. The first one's called Black Orion. Daisy is a show pony, and she always has been. She's got the pom-poms, the leotard, the hip-hop dance class at the YWCA, the youth theater auditions, the singing lessons, and the piano recitals. She's got the special smile she uses when there's a camera nearby, and she says please and thank you without ever having to be reminded. She's only 9 now, 2 years younger than me, but I don't feel like I've got any kind of firstborn clout here. My family lives on a soggy acre of Oregon land right next to the Pacific, and the wet salt air eats away at the foundation of our house each winter. But this is not something Daisy would ever notice. While she's playing in the kitchen, I'm studying the way everything under us is cracking apart, splintering and coming undone. There are fractures on the patio, and the walls sometimes seem to swell and sway, barely able to stand the pressure. Sometimes when Ronnie, my stepdad, is out with friends, and Mom is at work, and Daisy is looking at herself in the mirror or whatever she does, I go down into the basement. It's cold down there, so it's best in the summer. The slugs all move in for the moisture, crawling along the damp floor, leaving trails of silver. The main kind of slugs we have are the shiny black ones called Black Orions. I looked them up, found out they're hermaphrodites. I wasn't sure what a hermaphrodite was, not really, so I had to look that up too. Sometimes when I look up stuff, I tell Ronnie, and he's usually impressed that I know so much, but this isn't something I want to explain to him. Earlier this summer, there was a day when everyone was out, and I did something I'd been thinking about doing for a long time. I went to the basement, took off all my clothes, and laid down in the middle of all the slugs. It felt like hours waiting. A lot of them came, then stopped, curled out, or changed directions. But then finally, one and then another slowly made their way up my side, crossing the landmass of me. I tried to stay completely still, pretended I was a corpse. I wondered what we looked like as their cold bodies glided over mine, wondered what someone would think if they walked through the door and saw. Then I imagined it was me coming through the door, looking down at my own body. Flat chest, slender hands and feet, and all my pet slugs around me, a whole kingdom. I saw myself and thought, here's someone who's interesting at least. But I'm not sure anyone else would agree. Now I can't get the idea of a hermaphrodite out of my head. I feel distracted all the time. Wonder if I know any hermaphrodites. Sometimes I think Ronnie might be a hermaphrodite. Once I saw him in Mom's dress and they were laughing in the bedroom and closed the door and kept on laughing. And they never said anything about it later. Mom could be one too. She's got these thick hairs above her lip that she sometimes forgets to pluck, and when they grow out, there's a dark shadow there. My dad left when I was 1, and I don't remember him. Mom says I don't need to worry about him because I got her genes. She said before I was born she thought I might come out black because he was black, but I'm almost as white as her, prone to sunburns. I did have dark curly hair like him when I was little, but it has lightened, Mom says, with the sun, and softened over time. I wish I had something from him, something I could point at and say, see, this is from my dad. Daisy is my half-sister, but I've known her almost my whole life. Sometimes I feel bad just calling Ronnie my stepdad because he's been here for so long. Daisy has all the luck. She's good at everything, has 2 parents who made her on purpose, and she's pretty in a way that people recognize, even just on the street. When she was younger and some stranger would say how cute Daisy was, Mom would always correct them. She's not cute, she's intelligent, Mom would tell them, and give them the eye. Most people didn't seem to understand, probably were horrified that this mother was yelling in the grocery store about how her daughter wasn't cute. People generally haven't exclaimed about my cuteness, but I do get some attention. Mom says I'm precocious, and when she says it, I know I have something Daisy doesn't have. This past year, right before school let out, I got sent to the office because the teacher told us to make Father's Day cards, and I told her that her assumptions about the nuclear family were misguided. She just stared back at me with her round mouth open like a cave, and I could see her gold fillings in the back, before her lips got hard and tight and she told me to leave the room. The principal called home, but that night when she got off work, Mom just gave me a big hug. The nuclear family is misguided, huh? She asked me before lights out as she leaned in my doorway, rolling herself a cigarette. I told her that a few months back I had heard her talking with her friend Frances, that I had sat in the hallway and listened as they drank wine and blew smoke out the window. Frances said nuclear families were nothing to strive for and were often pretty dysfunctional, I reminded her. Mom smiled and gave me this look she sometimes gives me. I'm scared to ask what other conversations you've each dropped on, she said, and laughed a little and turned out my light. But I couldn't sleep. I wondered what else Mom talked about with Frances when they thought no one was listening. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I think about the Black Orions in the basement, living their hermaphrodite lives. I picture their slick black bodies, their movements so slow and sure. If I visualize them long enough, I can usually fall asleep. Sometimes, though, I just keep worrying about things. My biggest fear is that I'll grow up to be a regular woman with boobs and kids and stresses. I don't want that, not at all. My friend Amani just got a bra, and I can tell she's so proud of it, like she's really going somewhere now, like she's a grown-up. I don't mind that she's excited, but I don't have much to say because that's the last thing I want. I don't want to explain anything, though, because I might end up telling her about the slugs and she wouldn't understand. I can't think of anyone who would understand. Not Mom, not Ronnie, and definitely not Daisy. I wonder if my dad would understand somehow. Like maybe he left because he agreed that a nuclear family wasn't all that great. And maybe he was precocious like me and wouldn't think it was weird if he knew about me and the slugs. I thought everyone was out again today when I went to the basement. I took off my clothes and lay down in the spot I liked, near the window that looked out at the yard at eye level, so I could see the overgrown grass and ocean winds blowing the cedar tree. There was just one black Orion out, and it was curled in a ball of silver it had made. I curled in a ball too. Then it stretched out a little and moved, and I tried to copy what it did exactly. I wasn't thinking of it as a dance, but for a second I could understand why Daisy liked to practice her ensembles and arabesques over and over. I stayed on the floor for a while, making the same shapes as the slug, but I was getting cold. When I pushed myself over, I saw her feet first, housed in pink ballet shoes, and when I looked up, there was Daisy, staring at me with a look on her face that made my stomach turn icy. "Mom, Dad," she screamed, strangely guttural and hoarse, in a terrified voice I'd never heard her use before. "Help," like it was an emergency. Mom and Ronnie came running down the stairs, stopping next to Daisy a few feet away from me. I just stood there before them, shivering and naked. No one said anything at all. Below us, the black Orion stretched itself out, slowly covering everything in silver, looking like it was having the time of its life. Thank you. And then one more short one. It's called "Push Me Away a Little Closer." Granddad sits in his chair, scowling into space. I've heard all his stories a million times of backpacking trips over mountain passes, Granddad carrying everything, or cutting off his finger while making a dollhouse for my mom when she was little, refusing the hospital and wrapping the bloody stump with old gauze. It doesn't hurt at all, he had insisted, or so the story goes. Everything somehow turned out okay with Granddad, at least until recently. Now he is still like a boulder and that heavy. He sucks the air out of the room, where we tidy this and dust off that, remind him how to use the microwave and put on smiles. I go over on my motorcycle twice a week after summer school lets out. Mom gives me $20 for each visit. She has had enough of him and there's no one else. Granddad gave me the motorcycle when I was only 12 and couldn't ride it. It just sat in the garage tormenting me. Now I'm finally old enough. "Would you look at that? Your helmet is horrendous," he exclaims when I come in. With last year's birthday money, I got myself a helmet the color of a neon orange safety cone. "I know, Granddad," I say. "I'm just trying to stay alive." He scowls at this like usual. We've had this conversation at least 20 times. Granddad can get pretty mean. "You're a sissy, not going to amount to anything," he yells at me this afternoon when his demon cat scratches me out of nowhere and I scream. I admit I did hit a high note. He and the cat are two old flea bags, peas in a pod. Peas in a pod is something my grandma used to say. She was the one we all liked the best. We always thought she'd live the longest and we'd have more time with her, but she died last year, an unexpected stroke she didn't recover from. Now we have Granddad sunk into his lazy boy, yelling at the TV. "A parade? What in the world? This is just goddamn ridiculous." The news is showing Portland's Pride Parade, where I wish I was. Mom knows everything about how I like other boys, even my crush on Marcos. She's supportive, but says I'm not old enough to go up to Portland with just friends and no adults. Maybe next year when I'm 17. What I don't get, Granddad says, his eyes glued to the TV, is why the women are so ugly and the men are so beautiful. My ex's dad actually said that. More and more often, I don't know what to say to him, and it's exhausting to stay positive through Granddad's bombardment. Lately, I just try to amuse myself to pass the time. "You find the men attractive?" I ask, smiling. I am expecting a big protest, but he just looks at me. He looks at me closely, maybe more closely than he ever has. I wait for criticism, for some kind of onslaught. He just sits there looking me over. "I'm sorry," he says, "for everything." I'm not even sure he's talking to me, but I don't want to ruin this moment. He leans over in his chair and motions me toward him to give me a hug, something he hasn't done since I was 7 or 8 with a scraped knee or a bumped head. I wrap my arms around him and wait for a second. And in that moment, I feel better than I have in a long time. "Are you wearing perfume, sissy boy?" he says, pulling back away from me and pinching his nose dramatically. I straighten up to stand and pat him on the back, pick up my helmet, and head towards the door. "I'll see you again on Thursday, Granddad," I say. I look back at him as I start to pull the door closed behind me, see his thin lips tremble. He looks like a little kid for a moment, and then just as suddenly is back to his old man self as he stomps his foot against the recliner. He starts to change the channel, but then doesn't. He holds the remote in the air like he's a conductor. He keeps watching the celebration on the TV, all those gorgeous men in their exquisite plumage, all those beautiful bright birds, like they're a radiant memory just beyond his reach.
Yeehaw, thank you, Carolyn. You can read the slug story before the book comes out because it's in the latest issue of Buckman Journal, which is over here. And there are selections which feature all of our 3 readers from past issues. So flip through it even if you don't take it home. Check it out. Okay. Get ready for Carolyn Supinka, y'all. She's a visual artist and writer living in Portland, Oregon. She creates hybrid, cross-disciplinary projects that merge art with natural science and is inspired by the natural world, especially geology and deep time. She makes zines and poetry comics with Conjunction Press, and her work has appeared in Passages North, Diagram, Gigantic Sequins, Ecotone, and Redivider, among other publications. Her first full-length book of poetry and poetry comics, yes, you heard that right, it's both, Metamorphic Door, is out now from Buckman Publishing almost exactly a year ago. So happy birthday to the book and welcome, Carolyn.
Thanks, Sunny and Charlie, that was amazing. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. And yeah, I can't believe it's been 1 year of having Metamorphic Door out in the world. I'm so grateful to everybody, especially Buckman, for helping this book come to be. It felt really special to be able to have both poetry and comics in a project together. So I'm going to be reading from that tonight as well as some new stuff. Wildfire season. Today, you're floating on an alpine lake and watching the wildfire burn across the shore. The smoke gallops like a river of horses. The waves press against the sand like a column of horses. There's something horse-like, too, about the beetle's shuffling insistence in the air. And there's the neck of a horse in a shelf of mossy rock, arching its back, wet with age. You try to be philosophical about the season and fail, betrayed by your weakening bones, the twist of morning's hands on your face. On the drive here, you traveled alongside mountains and questions of motherhood and labor. When brushing a beetle from your eyes, its body flakes and smears on your skin, reveals that it is really just raining ash. The sun looks like a sun again, now that it's fallen beneath the column of smoke, while the moths torment a halo around a pine. You are unlearning the world you thought you knew. People do this all the time. Climate change. Like Emmy said, a lot of these poems about the natural world, deep time and geology. And thinking about the anniversary of the book, like the relationship between these poems and time just became like even more evident to me. And thinking about cycles and seasons, so that's a lot of the way this book is organized. Rat tree. It feels like it's been winter for years. Every tree in the backyard is faceless and bare, filtered through the grayscale of December light. Most nights I can't sleep, aching from isolation, the articulation of cruelty in the daily news. Everywhere a loss, vast and bright. The knife edge of daylight, and at night in the backyard, a constant cacophony of scratching, rats climbing, rats fighting, the crunch of fresh snow under sturdy rat feet. I can't stop watching the rat trade because the rats clearly know something we don't. We're newcomers, lonely and ignorant in the ways of our garden and our empty, cold house, whereas Rat Tree is a party, feral nightclub, Rat Central, Rat Eden, Rat Island, Rat Galactic, blasting off into space, Planet Rat, population multitudes. Their residence is a fire that keeps me warm in my house as they twist and chatter in theirs. To build a home in the winter air, to shelter in my own fur, my fear and fury, to build a home with my teeth. There's 3 pairings of poems in the book that deal with time in a way that started as a writing exercise. I've been calling them reverse image poems, where the poem happens on one page and then happens again, but in reverse on the opposing page. And I liked it so much that I made the process the poems themselves. So those recurred, throughout the book. And will be happening now. This is self-preservation. I took a walk during golden hour, a suspicious lightness, the fig tree a monster in the corner, never quite ripe enough, a diminishing return, the glow of a video game like a neon corner of heaven in a window. A recurring dream compels me to break every breakable object in my path, then beg for forgiveness, then forget about being forgiven. This morning when I woke, I saw them there, trembling on the shore of the river, the silver washing their feet. I'm building a panopticon at the center of my consciousness. It will be my life's greatest effort. When I stretched my legs before sleeping, it was like my tendons shouted. I held my foot like a foreign object, like a telephone. We've got these instructions on how to survive. Do you ever say a word so many times you forget its meaning, and then in a violent excavation you crack open the tomb and climb inside, and in the cobwebs and femurs the future is there, holding on to itself? For all I joke about falling apart, for all that's after, I watch reel after reel of remodels, anticipate the crumbling plaster, revealing original hardwood floors, the ghost of a sconce in the wall. We've destroyed enough to know when something is lost forever. Self-preservation, again. We've destroyed enough. Forever is lost in the model. Revel in the crumbling wall, in the floor. Anticipate the originality of the reeling future. For all the femurs, you're the one joking about being apart from yourself, Cobweb. Hold on, this tomb is violent. Cracking open meaning, you forget the word for survival. Do you ever use the instructions you got? Do you ever say words like you're climbing? Foreign to being held, I object. Foot, tendon, leg. At the center is sleep. Stretching my life's consciousness, the panopticon of effort. The morning is trembling like a river, forgiven on the shore. When I woke, I forgot about breaking, began to beg for a path. The recurring dream compels forgiveness like heaven's video game. Returning to the corner, the diminishing ripeness is never quite monster enough. Neon figures on the window. Lightness takes me. The hour, suspect, golden. In her hoot. On your birthday, we stood in the desert. A horned owl swooped overhead because she was trained to swoop. I wore a big hat because my sun burns easily. We silenced our phones because a sudden ringtone would disturb the bird, send her wheeling away from the observation field into the shimmering desert. The edges of the world curled with heat, and because I wanted you to see how happy I was, I looked at you each time the owl looked at me. Because you asked to see the owl food, we got to see the guts. The owl trainer held out the little white yogurt cup, the tips of her bare fingers stained and streaked with the pink and purple that felt interior. Because I learned that bald eagles were no longer endangered, but gray wolves were nearly extinct, I wanted to see the one pacing the same path in her enclosure again and again. Because I wanted to create an enclosure around this memory of you in the sun, looking at rat guts on the first day of a new decade. Because the owl trainer told us you could learn about an owl from her hoot, who she is, who she's searching for. Because I was afraid to picture love as a single note shivering across the desert at night. Because I want to know what you can learn from the sounds I can't help but make. I'm going to read some super new poems. I was super lucky and grateful to get to spend a week on the coast at the Southwester for Oregon Arts Week earlier in May, or March time. It was a really great community, and I went there hoping to make some comics, ended up making some poems too, which I was psyched about, which reflected some of my time there and stuff I was thinking about, failing to go on a hike, doing a drawing exercise for preschoolers, and karaoke, which is a constant poetic concern of mine. Hug point. My obsession that season was imaginary television shows, not real ones, ones that I would make up, that spoke my own logic, the audience laughing, my own laugh. You're a rare day in the midst of breaking. It took us a long time to get quiet, but now here we are. We have quiet. The surface of the moon is a shifting texture. The pallid sea is so much more than I could contain in symbol. You've entered the dog competition with no dog. You're running across the stadium floor with nothing but your yearning in your business suit. You've trained so hard to perform. Where's the dog? The judges ask. She's showing up shortly. Where's the dog? They ask again. I can't answer for any disquietude. The shape of the mountain collapsing infinitesimally, a fraction is occurring, even if we can't see it. It's being experienced. It's real. That's wild. You're right. There it goes. I should put my hat on and go bathing. I wouldn't jump from the ledge into the sparkling pool below, but I know you would. I know it's likely to rain on the coast. I know it'll be like entering a cloud with your mouth open. I don't know whether the birds are waiting for flowers to be planted, but I know that when they are, they will eat the seeds. I know that it's terrifying what a government will do if you let it. I know I have a lot to offer, the least of which being my sympathy. I don't know how to quantify my rage. The idea that there's a way out is rapidly diminishing, and then it looms, like a wave coming in after pulling back. There's a cliff on the coast called Hug Point, because when the tide comes in, you need to hug the rock to get around it. You have to embrace the rough thing, your face pressed up against the debris of time, the rock, its strata, stripped clean by the waves, showing the way the land moved in different directions, how everything was totally different, changed, is changing, will change again. This image of knowing, trying to move forward while facing history, and at your back, the ocean, its endless roar. Drawing exercise for 5-year-olds. It's like you're dissolving in intimacy. The ants broke down the door and carried off the granola. Driving through the temperate rainforest, I listened to the news of greed and downfall. Today the crocuses are pushing wetly up. The eagle surveys the grass. It never occurred to me to pretend to be a wave, toiling inward and outward, but I've often considered transforming into sand. By definition, one of many, part of a landscape pulverized aeons ago that slowly became again a landscape, although transformed. I began to believe that art requires communication as it occurs. The students speak as they draw, a long medieval thread. The logic of image inside image, like a thatched roof or marine trench. Here's your father, the helicopter. This land is full of fire. Balls of fire, which are awesome but bad. Your mother with 6 legs lives inside a house. 2 tigers in love loom squarely over their love, which you can see, which trembles in orange shadow. No stripes. The most delicate spider in cobalt blue, swallowing nothing. An entire book of letters. The crocodile man who could see everything, and I mean everything. Nothing is as it appears, and I've often tried to be or appear, mutable and covered in wood chips, ready to be whatever is needed. By definition, vision is selective, until a kid's drawing makes it not. Inhabiting a wave as it moves around you, a pulling tether, the earth shifting like a thought, like a cliff turning into rocks, which become sand, which become more land. Meanwhile, physicality continues to distract, and my granola is exploding with ants. This is my last one. Thanks again, everybody, for being here and listening, and thanks so much to the Constellations team for putting this together. This must be the place, karaoke version. It's at this time of night that I start thinking things like, everything is deliberate. The blue tincture of streetlights on wet gravel, the lone deer stepping carefully through the grasses. The moment it sees us, sight shivers through its body a physical arrangement. While singing karaoke, I inhabit my past self during the chorus, feel acknowledgement vibrate within, when the wind, like an ancestor, takes off with your dream. It's barely believable, this existence, to be a house ringed by blue light. The lichen moves through time in a very enviable way. There must be a way of living that's softer than this. On the phone with Em while chopping zucchini, she reminds me how to ask for help, how talking through a problem isn't always solving it, but giving the problem a shape. Like cloth creates an edge I can hem and feel. It's like in the movie Poltergeist sometimes, the spirit is just static until given a clown or a tree to possess. Then we can see it, that mixture in the wind. Logging my labor, you help me think about work so I can put it down. Some song is all around us. Sometimes there's just too much vehicle, like a truck with ridiculously huge wheels, revving on the beach. I'm always letting the cat in. Wishing to communicate is like naming something precious. You want to be deliberate. You want to pretend we're here for a long time and a good time, and to pretend time is something we can measure or contain. We're all containers for something, whether matches or rage, hopefully love. We have dreams for the basement that may never be realized, but it just is what it is. Ain't that just the way? The heart wants what it wants, which is a basement. Not just container, but foundation. A home, which is where I want to be, and I got plenty of time.
Y'all have some new fans in the house tonight, and I'm sure that'll be the case for our third reader as well. But a little teacher trick, I'm going to say some other things now so they don't get lost in the shuffle at the end, which is that all of Buckman journals are over here. They can be bought, they can be checked out, and also, hopefully, you can be in them. The Poetry Prize opens tomorrow, so tell your friends, no entry fee as always, and then general submissions for the following issue will be open in July. So keep that in mind. You're the first ones hearing about it. It's a VIP. Lastly, there is a sheet of butcher paper upstairs. There is no butchering being done. There is a community poem being done. So grab a Sharpie, write a line, make a little document for tonight, and maybe it'll show up in a future Buckman or something. So thanks again for being here. We have certainly not least, but last, Stephanie Victoire, who is an author, creative writing mentor, and a workshop facilitator born in London, UK, to a Mauritian Creole family. Over the last 10 years, Stephanie has published several works of fiction in literary anthologies in the UK, as well as her own collection of short stories, The Other World, It Whispers, and short works commissioned and broadcast with BBC Radio. Since 2020, Stephanie has been living in Portland and has had work published with Buckman Journal. She's continued to develop her craft through teaching and group facilitation at spaces such as Up Books and IPRC. She leads the monthly community writing night there. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to read you a short story. Quick setup for this story. Between the years 1975 and 1980, the infamous British serial killer, known as the Yorkshire Ripper, murdered 13 women. His nickname, after Jack the Ripper, was given mostly because of the attacks on sex workers made in the middle of the night. His DNA wasn't on his victims, and for these 5 or so years, the police failed miserably in their investigation to catch him, causing chaos across the country. This fictional short story is not about the case itself, but is the backdrop for the important themes and issues I'm attempting to present through the story, which I've set in the year 1977. This was a pivotal time in England. The Ripper case brought out into the open changes we needed to see across the country and in society, particularly shifting the lives and safety of women. For the purposes of lexicon and the context of 1970s Northern England, I will be using the word prostitute in the dialogue instead of sex worker. I will also be giving the characters their Yorkshire accent, so for authenticity, please give that some grace. Some small things that might be confusing. In the north, they call dinner tea, same word as the drink. And across England, what we call bookies are known as betting shops or gambling houses. This is called report line. Rita turns the key as gently as she can, although there's no use in that really. There's that specific crunch sound it makes when it turns that she just can't muffle. And even if that goes unnoticed, the door will clunk loudly behind her no matter what. She creeps in anyway. There aren't any lights on. She's beat him home. She puts the hallway light on, which doesn't do what hallway light usually does for most people. It's supposed to welcome a person home. Rita hangs her handbag and coat up on their hook, and as she's unwinding her scarf, the door goes behind her, that sound, like it's just unlocked her stomach. Carl catches sight of her before he's fully opened the front door. He brings the chilly gust in with him, scrapes his work boots on the doormat. Clunk. Where have you been? She knows that tone, though most people don't catch what's inside it. Rita looks up at him briefly, tries to flash something through her mouth like she's happy to see him, her husband, the most important person in her life. He's been drinking. Maybe 3 pints in, his eyes have that look like they're sinking in the liquid he's full of. I was out with Annie. And it's true, she was. She kicks her shoes off and looks down to watch. He looks down to watch her do it. He won't move into the house properly until he's heard the story. He sees the plastic bag. What's that? His breath yeasty, a bit sour. Let's have a look. He lifts it up while she's still clutching it. Uses the light to read the name of the shop she's been to. Oh, it's just a dress. Inadvertently scrunches it up. The bag crinkles. A dress? For what? No smile. For Jim's 50th tomorrow night. Annie got me to try it on and she thought, how much was it? He still hasn't taken his coat or shoes off. He's just planted there between her and the door. She doesn't move either. That'll mean she's turning her back to him. It were 15. Annie bought it for me. That was also true. She wouldn't spend the housekeeping on something like that. And besides, he only gave her £10 a week. Rita had told Annie she'll have to explain where the money had come from, and Annie had said, so tell him. Annie was doing okay on Harry's state pension, and she got more than most widows, what with him having served the Royal Air Force. That bloody sister of yours and her spoiling you like that. He starts to take his coat off now. Is she that desperate and lonely she's got to buy people? He unlaces his boots, wavers a bit, has to lean against the wall. Maybe it was more than 3 pints. We were just having a nice afternoon is all. She tries another smile. He doesn't look up. Well, as long as it didn't come out of my pocket, he says, fumbling with the buckle of his belt. I need a piss. Pushes past her to get up the stairs. I've not had me tea yet. She hears him call down from the landing just before the bathroom hits the wall opening and he's streaming loudly into the toilet bowl, which she can hear above as she gets herself into the kitchen to get cooking. Rita's hands go to work without her. The frying pans come out of the cupboard. The oil is poured into the base of it. Out the freezer comes the bag of frozen chips and from the fridge the reduced price gammon. She pulls the can opener from the drawer and sets it down for later when the peas are ready to go into a pot. And as she does all this, and as Carl runs himself a bath upstairs, Rita thinks about what she and Annie had heard from the next changing room over as she was trying on the dress. She can't shake it. 2 women talking about that young lass who'd been one of the Ripper's last victims. Only 16 she was, and she weren't, she was just an innocent young girl. So it could be any of us now, couldn't it? The voices speculated. Annie and Rita had gone quiet in their changing room then. But why would he go for her if she weren't prostitute? That last word had dipped dramatically in volume, but Rita and Annie had heard it. Well, I'm sure she weren't dressed like one, the one with the softer voice had said. Rita adjusted the dress around her collarbone, took a step back in the mirror to see if it was too tarty, and then felt guilty for thinking that, felt ashamed for looking at the edges of herself. Carl once told her the Ripper wouldn't look twice at her if he saw her walking down the road. He'd laughed hard walking out the living room after he'd said that. It was hard to avoid talking about the killer who was shaking up the county. It was hard to avoid hearing about him on the news, the radio, in the streets and in the pubs and the homes of the folk whose lives were being upended because the police were all over the towns like rats. Rita remembers when the killer was given his title, a Victorian nightmare resurrected right here in Yorkshire, and no gory detail had been spared when the tale was told. There was a pattern, a blow to the back of the head, and a knife repeatedly hacked at the front of the body, as if to erase the parts of a woman he couldn't stand to let live. This man hates prostitutes, the detective had said to the reporter on the telly. Rita heard women say it all the time around her that at least they were safe because they weren't on the game. Until recently, until the schoolgirl. But the first woman had never left Rita's mind. She and Annie had talked about it, how Annie had met someone in the laundrette who'd known Wilma McCann from when she was still with her husband. He used to beat her something rotten, they'd said. She had tried to do what she could for her kids when she left him. What a shame that was her only choice, leaving them there, tucked up in bed at night on their own. Just yards from the back of Wilma's house, on the green, the Ripper got her. They must have been sound asleep. And just like that, days later, Rita and Carl's fish and chips were being wrapped up in Wilma McCann's story. Darren the chippy was standing there folding the newspaper into a neat little parcel over the cod as he made small talk about it with Carl. The smell of bubbling fat was turning Rita's stomach over. It had never gotten to her like that before, but the stories were running off the newspapers, up the greasy walls and all over her skin. She was snapped to when Carl put his hand on her shoulder. It was warm from having been in his pocket, but that didn't feel nice at all. Well, you stay safe now, Rita. Keep indoors when it gets dark. You might not be a prostitute, but that man out there's still a maniac, Darren had said to her as he slid over their dinner in a plastic bag across the counter. And what do you think I've got here then? She'd nodded towards Carl in the quickest reflex of a joke, a bit of everyday banter around these parts, but as soon as she'd said it, she felt Carl's finger and thumb twitch tight around her shoulder flesh, and her blood felt like it curdled in an instant. Mind how you go now, Darren? Carl grabbed the bag and didn't let go of Rita's shoulder as they stepped through the door. Rita kept her eyes down, but could tell Darren was still smiling at them. Down the street and round the corner, the grip on Rita's shoulder was pressing further into a pinch, and the pinch was pressing further into a sharp pain. Rita tried to stop her eyes from watering, so she kept everything in to brace against him, holding her breath as they walked the short distance back to the house, past a couple of kids who were pulling a wooden dog toy on wheels with a dirty piece of string. Rita moves herself over to the sink now, practically shaking her legs to get going, or else she might stay frozen in the memories of that night. The pan begins to sizzle, ready to be fed. All the noises in the kitchen now rising around her, while upstairs him, silent for now, drunk sleepy in the tub, waiting to be called down to eat. Another body is found in the morning, and just like the other Ripper victims, Rita will carry around the details of it with her. Breast cut off, face smashed in, disemboweled and dumped in an allotment for a morning gardener to find. Annie phones the house as soon as she's heard the news, which sets Carl off while he's trying to eat his toast, storming into the hallway. He yanks the receiver out of Rita's hand and slams it down. She thinks of Annie on the other end of the line, left confused by the sudden dead tone. It's not her you're married to, just you remember that. His jaw is tight and his finger is pointed square between her eyes. Neither of them has a chance to move away from the telephone before Annie is ringing back. Rita doesn't advance to answer it. After 2 rings, Carl raises his leg and kicks the phone off its stand like he's trying to break down a door. 3 hard stomps, knocking the receiver off the hook. The dialer hits the wall and collapses to the floor, cracked. Rita waits for his next move. It's always better to wait. Without looking at her, he goes back into the kitchen where there's the sound of a plate breaking as it hits the rest of the dishes in the sink. The scrape of a chair and keys being taken up. Back he comes and grabs his work bag and coat. Not a muscle in her moves, not a step made. Then out the door he goes as though a gale has flung him out. The front door doesn't just clunk, it rattles. The day is dark with its promise of violence. Both inside her home and out, hackles are raised and teeth are set to bite. The telephone is a thing broken and the Ripper striking again is another. No one can seem to stop him. Rita realizes that Annie will come and knock for her in a moment to finish their conversation in person, to see if all is well. They live just 2 streets apart. To know that each sister is a minute's stride away puts something at ease in both their minds. A slice of peace Rita holds against herself each night, restless in a shallow sleep next to Carl. She suddenly remembers that she can leave the house, no one can tell her not to. She doesn't pick up the broken telephone from the hallway floor, doesn't even look down at it. She stepped over the wire to grab her coat. She pushes her feet into her shoes. Her house keys are still in her pocket where she left them. She turns the corner at the end of her street, the direction away from Annie's house. Rita doesn't know where she is going, but just needs to be going. Carl's car is already long out of sight. He drives a lot faster in that kind of mood. Let him get stopped by the police for speeding, she thinks. Almost at the same time, she notices the fog in the air, layered over these persistently moody October clouds, mottled and slinking around her like a wolf staring. Rita crosses the road with partial awareness of it. Pieces of her mind are thinking about different things at once, split apart and hovering around her head. Her legs have the maps of these streets memorized in every tendon and muscle, but this isn't the Yorkshire she once knew. People in the streets look thinner, their clothes loose, old and worn, some of them sliding away into the bookies and drink, melting in the hours of nothingness they've now got in spades. Jobs are being taken away like plates cleared from a table of food not yet finished. The soot-blackening brick walls around her that were once booming with industry now ache with neglect. Folks around here have always been resourceful. Bread can be baked and curtains can be sewn. Women's hands are as occupied as ever, but it seems that when the sun goes down, nothing can keep the trouble away. Carl is absent for 9, sometimes 10 hours a day at the garage, and for this Rita is grateful. He's been working there for as long as she's known him. When they first met, he'd pick her up from their parents' house in different cars and they'd go for long drives. Sometimes it'd just be them out on the road for miles. Carl could take her out of the places she saw every day and give her something to look at beyond the moors. The new motorways made the whole country possible to them. None of Rita's friends at the time had boyfriends with cars. None of them had been courted so keenly. They used to laugh together a lot. Back then, there'd been a thrill to the time they spent to getting to know one another. She'd never had that before, and it was exciting at first to be wanted so fully, by his side, as his wife, living in his house. Rita put the uncertainty of her future into the palms of something that sounded complete, and she left home. Her friends fell away behind her, and so did the traces of any path previously trodden. Annie had been gone at the time, down in the Midlands with Harry, though she did well to keep in touch. Rita can't put a finger on the day she and Carl stopped laughing together, stopped looking for a world outside. She can't quite put a finger on when she became the source of his agitation either. At first she thought it was because she couldn't give him children, but he never seemed to take to kids anyway. While Rita's feet take her to the high street, where her fears and thoughts can be stolen by the noise and bustle of traffic, Annie is standing on the doorstep of her sister's house, wondering where she has gone, looking at the broken telephone on the floor through the letterbox. She's relieved to eventually find Rita in the pub that evening for the bar manager's birthday party. All the locals have been invited to toast Jim's 50th, and it's a good turnout. The place is packed and lively. Rita is wearing her new dress, although Annie can't help notice that she's curled into herself, sat there next to Carl, who's in conversation with his workmate Larry. Carl spots Annie first as she makes her way between people to get to their table. He doesn't break away from Larry to greet her, but doesn't turn his eyes away from her and Rita either, clearly keen to watch them interact. Where the bloody hell have you been all day? What happened to your phone? I thought we were going to come here together. Annie's had enough of feeling worried sick all day and needs an explanation to settle her nerves. It's lucky that Rita is here at all. Carl had almost not let her come. She feels guilty for avoiding her sister all day. Carl catches Annie's concern while he's half listening to Larry talk about the upcoming service strikes. Rita can feel him reading her face what she might reveal, watching for the words that will come out of her mouth. I just needed a day to myself, Anne, Rita says before taking a sip of her baby shell. So how did your phone break? Annie tries again. Don't you think it's a bit much sticking your nose into people's business the way you do, Annie? Carl jumps in. Larry turns away to cheers his pint glass with a few lads who've just come over to say hello, one of them being Darren the Chippy. That's my sister, Carl. I can ask her what I like. There's a flicker of something in Carl's eyes then that makes Annie look to Rita's face, who isn't looking back but down at her glass. And then Carl is pulled into greeting the men who are congregating around their table. Annie doesn't take her eyes off Rita until she meets her gaze. Rita is silently pleading with her to stop mouthing off to Carl. Annie reads this well enough to drop it for the moment. Let me get myself a drink. Annie heads to the bar, waving hellos at people she recognises as she goes, occasionally looking back. Darren slides into the now open seat next to Rita for a friendly chat. He's closed the chip shop for an hour so he can come and wish Jim a happy birthday. Makes a joke about all his regulars being in here getting pissed instead of buying chips anyway. Asks how Rita is keeping. Goes on about the prices of things now, how half the folk in here will be worse off if the strikes go ahead, which inevitably leads to the Ripper. Who's going to get him while bloody police are on strike? He shakes his head. Rita shakes her head too, because she really can feel the weight of everything he's saying. Well, they haven't done a good job of that so far, have they? One of Darren's friends, who's heard his last few comments, takes an open seat next to him and chimes into the conversation. He's running rings around them, this fella. By the time Annie returns to the table with her drink, the matter is left in the air, after it's concluded amongst them that the Ripper could be anyone, even your next door neighbour for all you knew. Things had become so unsafe, Darren had added. But when were things ever safe? Rita had wanted to say. The three of them leave the pub together just after everyone sings for He's a Jolly Good Fellow to Jim. The fog has cleared away from the sky, leaving a crisp and bitter night in its wake. Rita and Carl has split off from Annie at her front door. She lingers as they continue up the road, a dreadful feeling in her gut latching on, telling her to keep watching them. She can see Rita's cold breath misting into the air, can hear Carl's voice rising, angry, accusatory. Then against these stone houses and the empty street, their words start to bounce and echo. I wasn't flirting with Darren, for God's sake! Rita bursts, her voice loud, firm, petrified. Annie starts up the road to them, but before she can reach, Carl lurches for Rita's jaw with his hand, squeezing her face and applying pressure to her throat with his palm. "Don't you fucking lie to me." His voice is low, his eyes sharpened. Annie shoves into him, shouts at him to get off her. He holds his grip a second or two before he breaks away as though he wasn't doing anything wrong. Continues walking away towards the house. Rita's shaking hands reach for Annie's, perhaps to stop them from going after him. "What were you doing to her?" Annie calls after him. "What did you do to you, Rita?" "Nothing, Anne, it's okay, I'm okay." Rita's face looks blue in the moonlight, shock hollowing out her eyes. "It was hurting you." Annie's breath iced and cloudy now. Carl has turned off into the next street outside. "I better go." Rita hastens to follow him, but Annie pulls on her arm. "Rita, you can't." "Annie, you're making it worse. Please." Rita breaks away from her grip, and then she's quickly gone. Straight into her house, Annie rushes. Throwing down her bag and keys, she hurries into the living room for a newspaper she'd kept. "Help us catch the Ripper" was the headline. She remembers seeing a phone number at the bottom of the page, the same number that detective had given on the news. "If anybody knows anything," he'd said down the camera lens to the nation. He put a stress on that anything. "Anything at all, please call the report line." She grabs the receiver of her telephone, turns the dial for each number before the horn of the dial tone can intimidate her out of this. One ear thumping, the sound of her heartbeat, the other muffled and subdued as though it were buried in sand. She hears her own swallow while it's ringing, and then Millgarth Police Station. A statement rather than a greeting. The officer's voice is slow, tired, thick with impatience. "Hi, I'm calling about the Ripper case. I'd like to give a name, please." "Please hold." The line is transferred. A woman's voice now. Annie doesn't catch her name as she says it too fast. In the same room as this voice is the din of many other voices and many other phones ringing, overlapping, blending and blurring. "Am I right in that you'd like to offer a line of inquiry to the police today?" "Yes." "What's the name of the suspect?" "Carl Beddington." A pause. Annie can almost picture the pen that's scratching across a piece of paper, marking her every word. She repeats it back to Annie through the phonetic alphabet: C for Charlie, A for Alpha, R for Romeo. "May I take your name, or do you want to remain anonymous?" Annie hadn't thought about answering this question. If she didn't give her name, would it be enough for them to take him in? And if she did give her name, could that lead to her getting into trouble? Anonymous, she decides in the moment. The sound of filing cabinets opening and closing, more phones ringing, more murmuring and throats clearing. The crackle of the receiver being balanced between the ear and shoulder as the woman writes. She's in this now. Annie can't go back on having Carl's name put into a police file. She's then asked to give a description, age, the colour of his hair and his eyes, his height, a guess would do, she doesn't know exactly. Where he works, if she knows that. Does he have a car and has she seen it? And as the picture of Carl builds on the page, for Annie it builds the story of the man who's been married to her sister for 9 years. How much he could have hurt her in that time, and how much Rita has never told, just lived through. But shouldn't she have done a better job herself to look after her little sister, to see signs? Why hadn't she noticed any of the signs before? Rita had been so keen on them when they'd first met. What'd she miss? And had their mother still been around, well, Annie stops her train of thought. There's no point thinking about that. It's the only way to get her out, isn't it? She thinks. This might be the only way to get her out. The voice on the line comes back. On what grounds do you have to believe that this is the man that we're looking for? Thank you.